Hello viewers, and welcome to the final scenario of the Dwarrowdelf cycle of adventure packs. This is Shadow and Flame, and the latest entry in the LOTR LCG Progression series, a production by Cardboard of the Rings, the bi-weekly podcast about the Lord of the Rings the card game, which is a living card game by Fantasy Flight Games. With you as always, this is Mitch.
And I'm Matthew.
So, Matthew, why don't you go ahead and introduce us to the final chapter of our story?
Our heroes have escaped from the darkness below the mines and find themselves in the third deep near the east gate. But as orcs begin to swarm, a foe more terrible towers before them. Durin's Bane has risen from the depths to stalk the halls of the dwarves once more.
So, before we actually cover the unique mechanics of this scenario, why don't we start off, as always, covering our player decks. And this time, I'm going to be running something radically different than anything we've seen before on my side of the table. I'm going to be using our newest hero, Elrond, in conjunction with Vilya, and a lot of expensive, in some cases out-of-sphere cards, to try and get as many powerful allies into play as quickly as possible to try and deal with the incredibly powerful Durin's Bane. I've got a lot of scrying effects to help us when we actually try and discard cards to get rid of this powerful adversary, and I've got a number of cheap allies, some allies that allow me some card advantage, some characters to help Matthew, a plethora of cancellation effects, readying effects, a lot of different card draw mechanics, and I'm even using a few different secrecy cards, just because we're going to be starting the game at 0 threat in this scenario. But Matthew, what is it that you're running today?
By and large, my deck is fairly similar to the one that I was running in Foundations of Stone, my same trio of heroes. But I did make some minor changes. Because we want to get a bunch of allies out and quickly to chump block against Durin's Bane, I put Vassal of the Windlord in this deck, so it's making a reappearance since it's a one-cost tactics ally. I've also varied up my Horn of Gondor a smidge, and I included one secrecy card in my deck, and that is Resourceful. My sort of thought here was, well, if I'm able to get both of them into play, I can put one on Glorfindel and one on a tactics hero, and sort of accelerate my resources even more to get more allies on the table. And then I took out some cancellation. Hasty Stroke is gone, and it's been replaced with Heavy Stroke in order to try to get that much more damage on the Balrog, so we can defeat this quest.
Alright, so before we take an in-depth look at our quest and encounter cards, why don't we go ahead and shuffle our player decks. I've gone ahead and already set myself as the first player, as per usual, so if we deal with any treachery cards where Durin's Bane leaps out and does attacks against me, I've got Frodo there, able to soak that up as threats. Why don't we go ahead and draw our opening hand of 6 cards.
Okay.
And it looks like mine is not incredible, but it's actually pretty good. I've started off with an artifact, neutral attachment in my hand. I've got our Astari Companion. I've got my secrecy effect that allows me to pull additional allies into play, and I just have a host of cantrip effects. I believe they're called the free card draw effects.
Mine could not be better. So, well, I think it could be better, but it is a pretty damn good start, so I'm going to hold on to mine.
So, now that we're both happy with our starting hands without even having to mulligan, why don't we go ahead and take a look at our first quest card. And this is Quest Phase 1A, and this reads, remove Dark Pit from the encounter deck and place it aside out of play. And this is a location that's going to end up coming into play during the third quest phase, and this is our way of dealing with this unique enemy. It also says add Durin's Bane to the staging area and then shuffle the encounter deck. So I'll shuffle the encounter deck now, and Durin's Bane, just like I mentioned, is going to be the primary antagonist here. So this is kind of the ultimate enemy of the entire Dwarrowdelf cycle. This is a unique enemy with 4 threat, 6 attack, 3 defense, and an incredible 27 hit points. It has Regenerate 3, so at the end of each round it peels off 3 damage tokens. It cannot be destroyed by conventional means, and we cannot play attachments on this enemy. It cannot leave the staging area, and as soon as we have threat equal to 1 or greater, it's considered engaged with us, and it attacks each of us in turn, dealing and discarding a new shadow card for each attack. So The encounter deck does cut us just a little bit of slack in that those shadow cards are discarded at the end of every attack, so they're not allowed to have a cumulative effect. So looking at our second quest card, Quest Phase 1B, first of all requires 9 progress tokens, and when revealed, we reduce each player's threat to 0. So mine drops from 31 down to 0.
And I go from 25 to 0?
Right, which means that Durin's Bane does not attack us during the first turn. We also have to reveal X cards from the encounter deck, where X is 1 less than the number of players in the game, and add them to the staging area.
Well, let's hope for no doomed, because then he's attacking us.
Yeah, no kidding. And there certainly isn't in the encounter deck, so I've shuffled that up. Let's go ahead and see what our very first encounter card is.
Alright.
And it is a Goblin Swordsman. So, probably not the worst. Doesn't look like we're engaging with it anytime soon if we don't want to.
Okay.
I guess at this point we can go ahead and start our first turn, keeping in mind that we probably want to quest as quickly as possible.
Okay.
We eventually want to amass a ton of damage on Durin's Bane, but since it does regenerate each round, that's not that important until the end of the game. So, why don't we go ahead and do our resources, and I'll draw 1 card. I ended up drawing a resource acceleration effect, which is just fantastic. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and play We Are Not Idle, choosing the value of X to be 0, so I'm going to go ahead and draw an additional card, which is another secrecy ally enhancement effect. I'm going to do another We Are Not Idle, choosing 0, to draw another card, which is a very powerful event that I'll probably never be able to afford. I'm also going to do a Daron's Runes, so I'm going to go ahead and draw 2 cards and then pick and discard 1 card from my hand. This is a little bit of a strange situation, but what I think I'm going to do is I'm just going to discard We Are Not Idle as my 1 card for Daron's Runes. So I'm going to go ahead and spend 2 resources, 1 off Elrond, 1 off of Frodo Baggins, and I'm going to go ahead and put Vilya onto Elrond. And I'm really torn between saving up for a resource acceleration effect or just playing a timely aid now. I think I'm going to end up waiting until next turn. So this is it for me. And how about yourself?
I was also lucky, and in my first draw, I got the card I was looking for Glorfindel, so I'm going to pay
Fantastic.
For Light of Valinor. I will also get my first, while I have a bunch of other good things, I will also get my first ally on the table in preparation for next round, which is the Veteran Axe Hand.
Awesome. Glad to see him. So I suppose that's it for you?
I'm all out of resources, so yep, that's it.
Great, and keep in mind at any point, if I so choose, I can drop an Astari into play, whether that's to drop my own threat or throw some damage on Durin's Bane, whatever it happens to be.
Okay.
So, let's see here. I guess, it wouldn't be the worst idea in the world to maybe also just have him committed to the quest during this first turn, but I'm so torn for that resource acceleration. But anyway, why don't we go ahead and do questing? I'm definitely going to send Elrond and Frodo for a total of 5.
Okay.
And how about yourself?
So I'm going to gamble that we will not be getting any doomed, and that nothing is going to be coming down or attacking me this phase, and so I'm going to quest with the team. So I'm sending 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So it looks like we're sending a total of 14 already. I don't know if I'm going to regret not dropping Gandalf into play, but let's see. Encounter card number 1 is a Inner Flame. So Durin's Bane gets +3 attack until the end of the round.
Okay.
We can have me remove a character from the quest to cancel that, but since it's not attacking us yet,
Right.
Not that big of a deal. I'll just leave that there as a little bit of a reminder. And card number 2 is a Watchful Eyes. So when revealed, the first player attaches this to Dane Ironfoot. It counts as a condition attachment, where if he's exhausted at the end of the combat phase, we have to reveal 1 card from the encounter deck and add it to the staging area. So it looks like we're going to be up against a total of 5 threats.
Mm-hmm.
We end up making 9 progress, which is exactly enough to finish our first quest phase.
Crazy.
So I guess right away we transition to quest phase 2A. and to 2B, and this reads Forced. If at least one hero committed to the quest this round, place 4 progress tokens on the rear guard, bypassing any active location at the end of the quest phase. And if at any point Durin's Bane has 0 hit points, looks like he's 27 shy at the moment, we advance to the next stage of the quest.
So it seems to my reading, Mitch, that this forced effect is going to trigger now, because the round isn't over, we're still the first turn, we're not yet at the end of the quest phase, so I'm thinking we get to put 4 progress tokens instantly on this quest card.
And I would tend to agree with you, because quest cards are explored immediately, and the quest phase certainly is not over. So I guess that means 4 progress tokens there.
Yeah.
But that brings us to the end of our first turn, I suppose. Shall we go ahead and ready our characters?
Yep, let's go ahead.
All right, so Control R, and we're now at that oh-so-dangerous 1 threat. I'm going to go ahead and make you first player.
Okay.
I'll draw a card, which is a shadow cancellation. I'll do my resources, and what are you going to be doing?
All right, so I am going to put the Rivendell Blade on my friend Glorfy.
Fantastic. And this is going to be benefiting both of us.
Yes, indeed it will. And that is it. I'm trying to save up for a few more expensive dwarf allies and some readying effects with my spirit resources. So that's it for my planning.
Okay, and let's see. For my turn, I'm going to go ahead and strip 2 resources off of Dane Ironfoot for a Steward of Gondor on Dane. Normally, Elrond would probably be a much better option, but just because I've got so many awesome leadership cards in my hand, this has kind of forced my hand on this one. So I will trigger that right away. I'll go ahead and put those resources on Dane. I'll go ahead and spend 1 for a timely aid. So I'm actually able to take advantage of that secrecy cost, so I reveal the top 5 cards in my deck and put 1 revealed ally into play.
Okay.
So why don't I go ahead and look at the top 5 cards. So Stargazer, Asphalloth, Unexpected Courage, Gildor, and Master of the Forge. I suppose I'm going to go ahead and put Gildor into play for 1 resource, and then I'm going to go ahead and shuffle my deck. At the moment, I could do another timely aid, or I could drop Gandalf into play. So I think I'm going to hold off on any additional plays during my turn.
Okay.
And maybe I'll just end up doing something later on. So I suppose we might as well transition to questing. So who do you want to send?
So are we wanting to start placing as much damage as possible on Durin's Bane in this turn?
So I guess in 3 more turns, we'll have automatically explored the rear guard.
Right.
I'll probably be committing enough characters to the quest where we're going to make at least a little bit of additional progress.
Okay.
You know, like there's no reason for you not to commit Glorfindel.
Yeah, I was going to say my only... normally I would send Valen, but I don't think there are any 1 hit point enemies in this quest. Is that correct?
I know for sure there's at least the Orc Drummer. There's quite a few 2 hit point enemies if we end up getting, say, a Gondorian Spearman.
Okay.
But hopefully we'll maybe push through quick enough that we won't need to.
Okay.
I guess I'm planning on tanking a lot of Durin's Bane attacks as threat.
Okay.
But we'll probably just have to see what happens.
So the reason I ask, obviously, I think, is that I was not going to send Valen to the quest so I could take advantage of his 2 attack strength plus 1 from Dane to add more damage to Durin's Bane. So I'll certainly send Glorfindel for 3. Veteran Axe Hand will be my chump. And so I've already committed a hero to the quest, so we can place 4 resource tokens on the thing with the forced effect. But should I send Valen as well, or hold him back for his attack strength?
I suppose you can hold him back.
Okay.
Our really only concern is that as soon as we get to Quest Phase 3B, Durin's Bane makes an attack against the first player.
Okay.
So it's probably good that we wait off until it's
sort of time
me.
Okay.
So let's see. If we're currently up against 5, I could send, say, Gildor and Frodo Baggins, and that would be 5, and a total of 8. I guess I could also do Elrond. We just don't want to make 8 progress. So I guess, why don't I also send Elrond, I think. Alright, so I don't have too much experience playing a Vilya deck. I certainly could have blindly used Elrond, hoping to put another ally into play, but since I don't have Stargazer or anything like that, I think I'll just do like I did. So I'm going to be committing a total of, it looks like, 8, and you've got 3. So even if we end up drawing 2 treacheries, it looks like we're not going to be able to pass, which is just fine. Hopefully we'll end up doing that next turn, and we'll start piling on a bunch of points of damage presently. So let's go ahead and see what we reveal. So encounter card number 1 is Counterspell. So when revealed, attach Counterspell to Durin's Bane. Counts as a condition attachment with the text forced. When a player plays an event, discard the top card of the encounter deck. If that card is a treachery card, cancel the event and discard the event player's hand. So I am going to cancel that. But what an ungodly terrible card.
Yeah.
So Counterspell is gone, a Test of Will is gone. Let's hope I don't pull another Counterspell. Card number 2 is a Goblin Swordsman.
Okay.
So 1 threat against us. We're up against a total of 6.
Okay.
Looks like we're going to end up making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 progress. At the end of the quest phase, we're going to automatically generate 1, 2, 3, 4 progress. So no matter what, next turn we're going to pass. I'll be the first player, and when Durin's Bane does an immediate attack against me, I'll either have a threat that I can gain or just chump blocking I can do.
Okay.
So we don't have any traveling to do. For engagement, we're still below 20. I don't suppose we want to engage either of these swordsmen?
Nope.
Alright, so that brings us to combat. So starting with the first player, since we've got threat 1 or greater, Durin's Bane starts to make some attacks. So a shadow card for you. How do you want to deal with Durin's Bane's...
As I mentioned, my little trusty veteran axe hand.
Alright, and the shadow card is nothing.
Okay.
So let's end up discarding that. At the end of the attack, your veteran axe hand is at -3 hit points and killed.
Yep.
A shadow card for my attack from Durin's Bane, which I am going to do undefended, is nothing. So this is a nasty location that we don't have to deal with.
Okay.
That's discarded, and I'm going to go ahead and assign that 6 undefended damage to Frodo, which ends up raising my threat to 7.
Okay.
And now we get to attack back.
Okay.
So what are you going to be doing?
I'll send... So Dane is ready. So Gimli's
Right.
3, Thalon is 3, and then Glorfindel is 3, but we have his trusty -2 defense from the Gryffindor Blade.
Alright, so it looks like the Durin's Bane adjusted defense value is only 1.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to end up taking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points of damage from your characters.
Mm-hmm.
So until the end of the phase, the enemy Durin's Bane still has its defense modified by -2. I'm going to go ahead and spend 1 leadership resource off Dane Ironfoot for a sneak attack.
I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
And I'm going to go ahead and pick Gandalf. I'm going to go ahead and do 1, 2, 3, 4 damage to Durin's Bane. And for attacks, I'm going to go ahead and have Gandalf attack Durin's Bane, which is going to be 1, 2, 3 damage, since he's only got that 1 point of defense. So, looks like he's already got 15 points of damage. At the end of combat, Gandalf will bounce back to my hand.
Wish I had my horn.
And, yeah, I suppose, shall we go ahead and refresh?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alright, so refresh, if you'd make me the first player, and at this point, that regenerate activates, so 3 points of damage comes off of Durin's Bane, but it's still sitting at 12. I guess we might as well do our resources. I'll trigger my Steward, and I'll end up drawing a card, which is a powerful spirit attachment that I guess might not be so useful anymore. The only thing I think I'm going to do for my turn is I'm going to spend 1 leadership resource off Dane for another timely aid, and I'm going to go ahead and reveal top 5 cards in my deck, pick one of those allies to put into play, and the ally that I choose looks like it has to be Haldir of Lorien.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and slap him on the table. Pretty good bargain right there. All these allies I've never played before, suddenly all over the table. And for me, that's it.
Okay.
I'm sitting on an Astari, of course, and a Ready All Characters event,
All right.
and the Spirit Attachment. So what are you doing?
I will play an Unexpected Courage, and you can pick the hero of your choice.
Fantastic. I guess I'll slap that on Elrond.
That's what I figured. I'm going to put a second Rivendell Blade on Glorfindel.
Awesome.
So Durin's Bane's defense is completely negated. And
Sure.
then, just so I can have a chump blocker, I will do another trusty Veteran Axe Hand.
Fantastic. I guess you've only got 3 cards left in your hand.
Yeah.
Potentially, I could have Haldir defend for you on a later turn.
Okay.
So just something to keep in mind. And I guess potentially, since your Axe Hand is doing more damage than Haldir would, maybe I might end up having him chump for you on this turn.
Yeah, I definitely could use some resource acceleration because I have expensive stuff in my hand.
Yeah. Well, let's see. I guess since you were so kind as to do the Unexpected Courage there, why don't I go ahead and use Gildor, since I'm not really going to need to commit him to the quest. So I exhaust him to look at the top 3 cards of my deck, and I have to switch one of those with a card in my hand, and then return those in any order to the top of my deck. So the top 3 cards, looks like I ended up getting, well, nothing too particularly great. But maybe I'll end up doing it like this. I've got to swap one with a card from my hand. I think I'll swap a Grim Resolve for a Grim Resolve. So, looks like I can't actually swap them in this format, but let's see. I will just rearrange them in this order here. So now that I've done that, I think I'm going to go ahead and wait until questing, so I can commit a bunch of characters to the quest, and then I can ready everyone, and that way we won't have to worry about gaining any threat from the quest phase, and we'll ready all of our characters.
Okay.
And that way we'll also be able to benefit from Thalin's damage. It'll just be fantastic. So, for questing, I'm going to go ahead and send Elrond to the quest, ready him with Unexpected Courage, and I'm going to send all of my characters, actually. So why don't you go ahead and commit all of your characters to the quest, and then I'll go ahead and trigger my little gimmick here.
So I'm sending 9.
Alright, so at this point, I'll go ahead and exhaust Elrond and Vilya to reveal the top card of my deck, and I will play Grim Resolve. So we'll go ahead and ready all of our characters. I've committed 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to the quest, and I think you said you're doing 9.
Yep.
So total of 18 committed, which is a little excessive, but we've got a lot of ready characters here. So, staging. Card number 1 is a Leaping Flame. So Durin's Bane makes an immediate attack against the first player, which is going to be me. And we've got to deal and resolve a shadow card. I guess what I'm going to do is I suppose I'll just declare Frodo as the defender. So let's deal and resolve a shadow card. And the shadow card is a nothing. It is a Great Cave Troll. So, we're not exactly certain when we end up discarding this shadow card. Normally it's at the end of the combat phase. It doesn't end up making any difference because it doesn't have a shadow effect. But we've resolved our first card, so we'll get rid of that right away. Of course, I'm going to end up taking that damage as an increase to my threat, so Frodo is only able to soak up 2 out of the 6, so my threat is now 12, still well below the engagement threshold of these enemies. And let's go ahead and resolve our second shadow card. So, card number 2 is a Goblin Tunnels. So not really a big deal. It's 2 threat, but of course we've sent 18 to the quest. We're going to be up against a total of 8, so we're going to end up making 10 progress, which is going to bring us to 23. And because we've passed this quest card, we immediately have to pass on to the next phase of the quest, which is this last Lord of Moria. So when revealed, Durin's Bane makes an immediate attack on the first player, and add Dark Pit to the staging area. So the special thing about this part of the quest is I've already used Frodo's ability, which is once per phase. So as a defender, I guess he's swinging for 6. I don't have any sort of shadow cancellation, so Elrond would be really risky. Gildor, I would just be losing. I guess, why don't I go ahead and defend with Gildor.
Okay.
And just watch it not have a shadow card, but as sad as this is, so let's do the shadow card, which is add Goblin Swordsman to the staging area. So a lot of nasty enemies sitting there. Unfortunately, Gildor takes 3 damage and is killed, but maybe I'll see another copy of him at some point. Now that the questing phase is over, we're presented with the opportunity to travel, and our best option here is probably this Dark Pit. While active, it gains Refresh action. Exhaust up to 3 characters to discard up to 3 cards off the top of your deck. If all discarded cards have a higher combined printed cost than the remaining hit points of Durin's Bane, then we win the game, as soon as we get 1 progress token on our active quest card. So this is what allows us to win. I guess let's think for a moment. So before we travel here, how much damage are we going to be able to do to the Durin's Bane?
Well, sadly, I do not have 1 tactics resource for my heavy stroke, but at the same time, none of my particular dwarves are doing a ton of damage on their own. Also, sadly, you're first player, so you don't get to take advantage of my 2 Rivendell Blades this turn. But for me, all of my damage is going to count. So if Dane is ready, I am doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. With my people on the table, but of course I have to block his attack, or defend against his attack as well.
So if the attacks of Durin's Bane end up going favorably this round, I think we'll end up with something like a 6, where we'd be discarding cards off the top of our deck, and it wouldn't be a guaranteed victory. It'd be a little bit of a crapshoot, and we'd probably risk, an auto win next turn. So let's go ahead and travel to the Dark Pit after all, and just make sure that we don't explore it completely. So let's go ahead and move on to engagement. So we're still well below the engagement threshold of these 3 enemies here. And let's go ahead and do combat. So I guess first player is me. I'm going to go ahead and do a shadow card to Durin's Bane. And again, I don't have any shadow cancellation, so I'm going to go ahead and do undefended. And it ends up not being a big deal. So we'll discard that shadow card. I'll end up raising my threat to 18, which is frighteningly high. Again, don't know if this shadow card here should have been discarded earlier or at the end of the combat phase. How do you want to deal with Durin's Bane?
Well, I mean, Haldir could defend for me, or I could defend with my veteran accent.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and defend for you.
Okay.
So Haldir with his Sentinel, and the shadow card is attacking enemy gets +1. So
Okay.
I guess Haldir is still dead no matter what.
Yep.
That card is discarded.
Mhm.
Haldir is killed. Again, too bad you don't have your
No.
horn. So how do you want to retaliate? I guess I can't do any damage. I
Right.
can't. get
Elrond's
past that
not
defense.
enough. So I will just swing with the team for a total
Okay.
of 12, and he
All right.
takes 12 because of my 2 Rivendell Blades.
Right. So it's as though he has no defense at all. So 12 more damage incoming. He'll be at 24. So even though he's got 3 hit points remaining, he's still going to regenerate at the end of the round. So shall we refresh?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alright, so refresh. Now you're the first player.
Okay.
And before we have the opportunity for player actions, this is when Durin's Bane regenerates. So let's go ahead and pull 3 points of damage off of him.
Okay.
We have the opportunity right now to exhaust characters up to 3 to discard cards, but we'd have to have a total of 6, which, even though between 2 of us we could maybe get it, it's still a little bit of a risky prospect.
Right.
So I suppose, shall we just wait?
Yeah, let's just. I think we can survive 1 more turn.
So hopefully I'm going to end up being able to control my threat enough that I don't end up getting murdered by these goblin swordsmen. It looks like we forgot to get rid of this card at the end of combat, so why don't we go ahead and do our resources. I'll trigger my steward, and we'll draw a card.
And I drew a 1, Light of Valinor, so that would suck.
I ended up drawing our mount for Glorfindel. That doesn't seem too useful at the moment. What are you planning on doing?
I can't do anything.
So, I'm kind of torn for what to do. I can make sure that we do a big quest push, but we certainly don't want to explore this dark pit. but I'm also afraid of gaining a bunch of threat from the nasty stuff in the staging area. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and spend a total of 5 resources to put Gandalf.
I am Gandalf, and Gandalf means me.
Into play, and I'm going to go ahead and trigger his ability to drop my threat by 5. So I'm going to sit down here at 14 and be a little bit further away from these swordsmen engaging me. Under normal circumstances, I could certainly exhaust Elrond and Vilya at the moment, but if memory serves, I think I've got a hasty stroke sitting at the top of my deck, which certainly isn't doing me any good if that comes into play. So, who are you going to commit to the quest? I guess we're up against a total of 9 threat right now, and I could certainly ready all of our characters, which I think is probably what I'm going to have to do.
Okay, so I'll send Glorfindel for 3.
Okay.
And then I can do Thalon for 2, and that's 5.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to send more than that?
Oh, it doesn't matter, because if you do 5, I can make up the difference. So,
okay.
So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do Gandalf and Frodo for a total of 6, which I guess makes it 11 for us. And I'm also going to do Elrond. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do a total of 9. You make it a total of 14. We're up against 9. Well, I guess if you also... because we're going to want to explore the Dark Pit, too, eventually. So why don't you also do Gimli, and that's going to be a total of 17.
Yeah, I'll send Gimli as well to make my total 8.
So if we're sending a total of 17, because we can't reveal negative threat, there's no way that we can pass through this location. So we're eventually going to want to explore the Dark Pit, but we certainly want to use its effect before we get rid of it. So we're going to send a total of 17. So even though I could also send Dane Ironfoot, I think I'm just going to hold him back. I'm going to go ahead and spend his resources for a Grim Resolve. So once again, let's ready all character cards in play. So I'll get rid of that. And for staging, so 17 committed, let's see what we get. Encounter card number 1 is a Inner Flame, which is just frightening. Durin's Bane gets +3. Attack strength until the end of the round. The first player may remove 1 questing hero he controls from the quest to cancel this effect. So Durin's Bane is going to be swinging for 9. Since you've got a chump blocker that doesn't affect you, I'm probably going to end up blocking with probably Gandalf.
I mean, I could remove Thalon from the quest. He's only 2.
Since we're both planning on chump blocking, I guess I could throw Gandalf under the bus, and you've got your axe hand. Shall we just let this resolve, I suppose?
Sure.
Okay, so encounter card number 2 is a Inner Shadow. So first of all, this surges, and then it's going to heal 5 damage from Durin's Bane. But the first player can remove a questing hero you control.
Well, once again, I could remove Thalon.
And I'm thinking in this case... you're maybe going to end up dealing, say, 9 damage to Durin's Bane. I'm going to end up doing maybe 3. Shall we cancel that?
Yeah, I'll remove Thalon, so I'm sending a total of 6.
Okay, so that is canceled, but it does surge, and it surges to a Great Cave Troll. Okay. So this does not take a damage from Thalon. It's got a very high engagement cost, but we're going to be up against a total of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, a total of 11 threat. And I guess let's go ahead and put Inner Shadow here in the discard pile, or Inner Flame, just below Inner Shadow. So it looks like we're going to end up making a total of 4 progress. So kind of a far cry from the 8 or 9 I was expecting. That brings us to the end of the quest phase. Once again, we've survived. I guess at this point we've got travel, but we don't have an option since Dark Pit is in the active slot. For engagement, my threat and yours is still low enough that we don't have to deal with any of these enemies.
Yep.
And that means combat. So Durin's Bane is going to be attacking both of us.
Yep.
So how do we want to deal with your attack?
Trusty Veteran Axe Hand.
Alright, so Veteran Axe Hand for what feels like the third time.
It's only second, I think.
All right, so let's flip that shadow card, which is attacking enemy gets +1 attack.
+3 because it's engaged with the first player.
Whoops, looks like I read that wrong. You're right, I read it as last player. So Durin's Bane is going to do a total of 9, which just obliterates your axe hand.
Yep.
And we discard that shadow card. Next up, Durin's Bane. I'm going to go ahead and have our old friend Gandalf challenge the Balrog.
Okay.
So, just like in the books, let's flip that shadow card, which ends up doing nothing, and Gandalf survives, taking 2 points of damage.
Don't mind seeing his weapon go away.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll go ahead and discard the fiery sword at the end of that attack, and now it's all you.
So Dane is ready, so I can attack for 3 from all of my characters for a total of 9.
Right, so yet again, the Rivendell Blade means we ignore his defense. He's going to be at 30 damage.
And just for fun, I will pay 1 for a hasty stroke. And so we can heavy stroke, so used to hasty.
Right.
So I can deal another 3 damage.
Right, so 1, 2, 3. And that looks pretty good to me. For my turn's combats, I guess I might as well trigger Elrond and Vilya just to reveal a card, which, just like I thought, is a hasty stroke. I'm going to go ahead and put that on the bottom of my deck. I'll use Unexpected Courage to ready Elrond, and Elrond and Frodo, an interesting pair, are going to go ahead and combine to add 3 more points of damage on Durin's Bane, because since you've already attacked, he's got that Rivendell Blade harming him. So, 36 points of damage on Durin's Bane. At this point, shall we go ahead and refresh all of our cards? Alright, so refresh. You've got to make me the first player. And here's how this works. So before the end of the round, before player actions, we have to strip 3 points of damage because Durin's Bane regenerates. Now, this active location reads, refresh action, exhaust X characters, a maximum of 3, to discard the top, it's going to be 3 cards of my deck. If all discarded cards have a higher combined printed cost than the remaining hit points of Durin's Bane, 0, discard Durin's Bane from play. So, I'm going to go ahead and use Gandalf, because he hasn't left play yet. I'm going to use Frodo, and I'm going to use Elrond, and I'm going to ready him with Unexpected Courage. Even though I could probably get away with exhausting 1 character, or maybe 2, since I've got a couple 0-cost cards left in my deck, I'm going to go ahead and do the maximum. So let's go ahead and reveal the top 3 cards of my deck and discard them. So card 1 is a 0-cost card. Card 2 is Glaewine, which is enough. And the third card is an Erebor Record Keeper. So a total of 3 is higher than the remaining hit points on Durin's Bane, so it looks like he is discarded. So, our big nasty enemy is gone. At this point, all we have to do is overcome our active location and do 1 progress token on our final quest card. And, maybe survive all this nasty stuff in the staging area. So, at the end of the round, now Gandalf is discarded, and I guess we're able to do our resources. Alright, so, 1 resource to each of my characters. I'll trigger my steward, I will draw a card. And I ended up getting something decent, not fantastic. I can't really play anything on my turn, so what are you going to be doing?
Well, my third and final veteran axe hand.
Alright, and I guess at this point we just need to make as much quest progress as we can.
Actually, I'm going to change my mind, and I'm going to make it the Erebor Battlemaster.
Okay.
The only reason is because I wouldn't be able to play Erebor Battlemaster next turn. I'd be a resource shy, but if I play him this turn, and then I can afford the axe hand next turn.
Well, I guess at this point, all we really need to do is make some quest progress, and then deal with all of these enemies remaining in the staging area. So it looks like we've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 threat against us. I'm only going to be able to commit 3 to the quest. I guess you'll make that at least 6. But we also need to maybe start dealing with some of these guys, because we're just not making a lot of questing progress at this point.
Well, I was going to hold back Gimli and the Battlemaster to deal with at least one of the swordsmen, which means I would send 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Are you wanting me to send more than that?
Well, I guess the only thing I'm afraid of is, say, gaining 5 threats. But that's probably not
So you're
going
sending
to
how
happen.
much? Because you didn't change
Right,
the
so
thing.
I'm only sending a total of 3.
Okay, then I'll go ahead. Then I'll just send the team, and maybe we can deal with them next turn. So
Right.
I'll 3 more from Gimli, and then 1 from him is 4, which puts me at 9.
Okay, so it's going to be a total of 12. Let's go ahead and reveal some encounter cards. Card number 1 is a Stray Goblin. So
Okay.
it's 2 threat, it's going to take 1 damage from Thalon. Card number 2 is another Goblin
Sheesh.
Swordsman. So this is looking a little bit scary here. But we're up against 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 threats. Our Goblin Tunnels doesn't reveal anything from our current quest card. It looks like since we've sent 12 to the quest, we're going to end up making 2 progress, but we're still quite a few shy.
Okay.
So this nasty staging area is a little foreboding here. We don't have any option to travel. For engagement, none of these options are looking too good. I guess you...
because the Goblin Swordsman is scary when undefended, I don't want to put 5 damage on Gimli because that kills him, so I will take the Stray Goblin.
Alrighty, so why don't I put him in front of you, and for combat, we've just got one little enemy here.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to deal with it?
Undefended.
And the shadow card is
Phew.
nothing, so 2 damage to one of your heroes.
Gimli, so he swings for a little bit more.
Alright, and how do you want to respond to Stray Goblin?
Dwarrowdelf.
Alright, so Glorfindel is able to do 3 damage to a 0 defense enemy. It is, of course, killed, and its shadow card is immediately discarded.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that brings us to refresh.
Yep.
Alright, so I'm at 16 threats. I'll go ahead and make you first player. I'll draw 1 card, which is kind of convenient, I guess.
Now I get the Horn of Gondor. But I am still not going to play it. I am going to play the Veteran Axe Hand, so I can have another ally. And that's it for me.
Alrighty, so for me, I suppose I'm going to go ahead and trigger Elrond and Vilya to go ahead and blindly reveal the top card of my deck, which is an Ancient Matham. So I guess I'll go ahead and play it on our Dark Pit here. Already, Elrond with Unexpected Courage. So now is when I'm a little bit regretting putting that steward on Dane Ironfoot as opposed to Elrond, because resources are becoming a little bit of an issue. Certainly the Durin's Bane would have had plenty of opportunity for us to discard attachments, but these 6 leadership resources aren't doing me too much good. I'm going to go ahead and spend 2 spirit resources to, I think, do an Unexpected Courage on Dane Ironfoot. Or should I... well, I guess just in case we have more nasty stuff come into play that you can deal with, I guess I'll toss that Unexpected Courage over to Gimli.
Okay.
For my last action, I'm going to go ahead and spend 1 resource off of Elrond for an Erebor Record Keeper. Whereas I certainly could have played Asphalloth and it would have been guaranteed progress tokens, I just really want to provide a little bit of a buffer, just because as soon as I gain, say, 4 points of threat, I'm going to be absolutely murdered by these enemies in the staging area. And that is all for my turn.
Okay, so I will send Thalon for sure, Glorfindel, Veteran X. No. I'll send Gimli. Alright, so I'm sending Thalon, Gimli, Glorfindel. That's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And for me, I suppose I will go ahead and do a total of 7. So it looks like we're doing 15. And let's see what we get. So encounter card number 1 is a Ranging Goblin. So it takes 1 damage from Thalon. When revealed, each player must deal 1 damage to a hero he controls.
Okay.
I guess I'll put my damage on Frodo.
Yeah, I'm going to put mine on Glorfindel, just because I don't want Gimli. He might be doing some defending here soon.
Yeah. And then this has a forced effect. After a character leaves play, shuffle the Ranging Goblin and the top card in the encounter discard pile back into the encounter deck.
Okay.
Really not that big of a deal. So, let's see. Card number 2 is a Goblin Scout. Good God. So it looks like we're going to be up against 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So we're going to end up making 2 more progress.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still a total of 4 away from winning the scenario.
Yep.
And we've got just a ton of nasty crap sitting here in the staging area.
Well, I will take one of the Goblin Swordsmen.
All right, let's see. Why don't we pick our very first one? And for me, I'm not going to engage one of these enemies.
Okay.
So, 1 shadow card for your Goblin Swordsman, and of course, none of the other ones engage with us.
Yep. Bye-bye, Veteran
Your
Axe Hand.
Veteran, okay, so shadow card is
Nothing.
essentially nothing, and your Veteran dies.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that the forced effect of ranging Goblin triggers,
Mm-hmm.
so he's going to be shuffled into the encounter deck,
Yep.
as is a Goblin Scout,
Sure.
I think shadow card. So let's shuffle that.
Yeah, kind of 2 birds with 1 stone there.
Yep.
And let's see. Gimli is enough.
All right, so Gimli is going to end up definitely killing the Goblin Swordsman, which is eliminated, and its shadow card is immediately discarded.
Yep.
So our staging area is a little bit more clear.
Mm-hmm.
I guess, shall we go ahead and refresh?
Yep.
All right, so refresh. If you'd be so kind as to make me the first player, I will draw a card. I'll do my resources, and Dane is sitting on so much. For my turn, I've got an ally, and I've also got Asphalloth. I guess, first of all, I'm going to use Elrond and Vilya to reveal top card of my deck, which doesn't end up doing any good, so I guess I'll put that on the bottom. I'm going to unexhaust Elrond, and I'm going to go ahead and pay 2 of his resources for Asphalloth on Glorfindel.
All right.
And since that's not restricted, that is just fine. So he has got basically every attachment he could ever hope for.
Mm-hmm.
And that is it for me. I've got a sneak attack, but nobody really worth playing it on.
Okay. I'm going to put a Horn of Gondor, finally, onto Thalon.
All right.
And though I probably won't get much bang for my buck with that now, and then I'm going to use my final tactics resource for a Vassal of the Windlord.
All right, sounds pretty good. And I just thought it would have been absolutely horrifying if that ranging goblin would have returned the Durin's Bane to the encounter deck.
Mm.
Let's see here. For questing, I suppose I'm going to go ahead and send 7, just like last time. And how about you?
I'll send whatever I sent last time, too. 8.
So that is going to make a total of 15. Let's go ahead and see what we reveal. So card number 1 is, well, it surges, so the when revealed has no effect, but it does surge.
Yep.
So card number 1 is Stray Goblin. I was kind of hoping to see more Durin's Bane specific cards. Card number 2 is a counterspell. So when revealed, attach it to Durin's Bane, but we can't, so I guess we'll just discard it.
Yeah.
Looks like we're up against 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which means we're going to end up making a total of 3 progress.
Oh, sheesh.
Why don't you go ahead and trigger Asphalloth before we resolve the quest?
Yep. So.
All right, so Asphalloth is going to end up putting 2 progress tokens on the Dark Pit. We're going to end up making 3 progress, which is 1 on our active location. It is removed. Ancient Matham triggers, so I'll draw 3 cards. Ended up getting some awesome stuff. And that means we've got 2 progress tokens left to place on our current quest cards. So at this point, Durin's Bane is not in play. We have 2 out of the 1 progress token required to complete this quest card. And it looks like at this point, despite an absolute horde of enemies chasing after us, we have won the scenario. So, Matthew, any final thoughts about Shadow and Flame?
Yeah, so as I've said so many times on our series, the Dwarrowdelf cycle sort of was coming out at a point in my life where I just wasn't able to play LOTR LCG very much. So most of these quests, certainly the last 4, I've not played very much. In fact, I think this is only the second time I've ever played Shadow and Flame. The first time, I think the team died relatively quickly. So it's certainly frustrating that I probably could have handled more enemies per turn and killed more, but because my threat is so low, I couldn't optionally engage more than a single enemy. But it's definitely a fun quest. We sort of made mincemeat of the Balrog relatively quickly, I think. Heavy Stroke, really not necessary. My Battle Masters weren't even out on the table. They were just too costly. Really would have been nice to have my Horn of Gondor out earlier, or the one copy of Resourceful. That would have helped a whole lot, because I was really getting strapped for resources. But it's definitely a fun quest. I enjoyed it, and I think it's a fitting end to a pretty darn good cycle.
Yeah, I definitely think we'd have seen more good out of Heavy Stroke if maybe we could have had a cancel shadow effect to rely on, so Gimli could have stomached defending one of the attacks from Durin's Bane for you. Overall, I thought this was a very interesting play. I'll have to admit this is one of the only times I've ever played this quest without using the Hama lock, where one player plays Feint or Thicket of Spears and essentially uses Hama's ability to continually recycle those cards. But Feint didn't even make an appearance in this video.
Right. I was going to, my next round of comments, I was going to mention that I didn't even draw Feint, and I was also going to talk about how, Gimli never had a chance to really get pumped up because I wasn't engaging with the smaller enemies. And there were many turns I debated, well, should I take one just to do undefended so Gimli can be a little tougher? But, of course, if we kept getting swordsmen, and when they're undefended, they're attacking for 5, which would kill Gimli. So I didn't really have the option early on to pump up Gimli and then still in the same turn attack Durin's Bane. So I was always sort of, not vocally, but internally debating, should I take one and defend with Gimli but not attack Durin's Bane this turn? And so ultimately, obviously, I decided not to go that route. But yeah, it definitely led to a swarm of goblins, as our narrative predicted.
Kind of funny how the one video where we have some gigantic enemy attacking us is the one time that Gimli doesn't end up being, loaded up with Citadel plates and just an absolute beast.
I've had it in my hand from the beginning. It was more important to play cheap chump allies. Luckily, I was drawing veteran axe hands like there was no tomorrow, and so the Citadel plate just been there from the beginning.
Yeah, just to kind of point out some all-stars in this scenario, I definitely think Glorfindel with those Rivendell blades committing to the quest and attacking was absolutely fantastic. Elrond, I think, was just incredible in the early game, though since I never ended up getting Imladris Stargazer and I ended up losing my one copy of Gildor, he definitely kind of cooled off in the middle and end of the video. I was just very glad that we didn't manage to kill Durin's Bane only to be destroyed by all of this stuff in the staging area.
Yeah, I mean, by cooled off, you mean with every turn, then I suppose. Well, I guess we got Ancient Madam, but, yeah, Elrond, as I mentioned in our card review video, is not my favorite hero because, in fact, he's probably my least favorite hero, or down towards the bottom for sure. And mainly because he can whiff so often unless there's so many cards on the table to really combo. And again, we didn't really get our combo cards. I never had Feint, which before broke this quest, but I never even draw it to break it in the first place. Your scrying effects weren't drawn. So I sort of feel like we won this quest the old-fashioned way, and I think I take pleasure in that.
Well, I guess now that we've come to the conclusion of the Dwarrowdelf cycle, any overall thoughts on all of these adventure packs?
Well, I think by and large, each of the quests in this cycle of adventure packs is a step up and above and better than the 6 of the Shadow of Mirkwood quest. I mean, I still have a soft spot in my heart for Conflict at the Carrick and Journey Through Rosgobel. It's probably more sentiment than anything. The early days of the game where I really played a lot. Love those 2 particular quests. These quests I've played a lot less frequently, but I just find them better constructed. And I've said a few times throughout both our playthrough and card review videos that the designers just get better and better. I think it took them a little while to find their sea legs. We've also had new designers come in, replacing some of the old, or at least working in conjunction with the earlier designers of the game. And so I'm looking forward to playing the Hobbit and Heirs of Numenor quests because I can finally stop saying I'm not familiar because I've played those a ton. So, but specifically to Dwarrowdelf, I think it's a great cycle. I think there's a lot of replayability in a lot of these quests, and I think that I really enjoyed, like I said, these 6 packs a lot more than I did the Shadows of Mirkwood.
You know, I definitely have to agree. I think that overall, as each subsequent release has come out for this game, we've just seen it get better and better, which I found extraordinarily heartening. It seems like in the very beginning, players had a lot of complaints where the encounter decks are so inconsistent and there are a lot of other flaws in the game. And even though each new adventure pack kind of brings up a host of rules questions, particularly like we saw in Foundations of Stone, I think overall the new mechanics introduced are not only very fun, but they're very clever. They each manage to put an interesting new spin on the game. The Red Horn Gate, I thought, was incredible fun despite our difficulty in finding those victory point locations, and I've just had a ton of fun throughout the Dwarrowdelf cycle. So I definitely enjoyed Shadows of Mirkwood, but I do have to admit that I was a much bigger fan of this cycle of adventure packs. I think the game just continues to get better as it goes on, and I'm excited to see what the developers continue to release for us. So very excited to keep continuing the progression series, surging on ahead into much more familiar territory for current players of the game, and I'm excited for what's to come.
One of the common complaints made by folks at the end of this cycle, and certainly continuing through Hobbits, is that you have to play dwarves to win. And certainly they are powerful, and I doubt that they are going away anytime soon. And while I'm using 2 dwarf heroes and a bunch of dwarf allies, and Mitch has some dwarves as well, these weren't necessarily dwarf-centric decks. And I think in large measure, for this particular quest at least, Glorfindel was pulling his weight much more so than Gimli or Thalin. Battlemaster never really saw any use. Dane certainly helped some, of course. So, dwarves aren't the end-all, be-all. There are other sorts of deck constructions that you can make, but certainly they're powerful. And as we'll see in our next video, when we review the Hobbit player cards, the dwarves are about to get a lot more love. I think part of the fun of the Dwarrowdelf cycle in comparison to the first cycle is we kind of have boss enemies for the first time. We have the Watcher in the Water, we've got the Balrog, and that's really kind of fun to beat the ultimate enemy. There were certainly big baddies like Addercop in Return to Mirkwood, but we actually never got to fight Addercop. So in this case, they're sort of building in these boss fights that must occur, and I don't know, as a tactics player, I just really enjoy that, and I look forward to our boss fights in the future.
Well, I think we've about said all there is to say about this scenario and our Dwarrowdelf cycle of adventure packs. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video and watching our series throughout the end of the second season. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. Just like Matthew mentioned, next up is going to be our review of the player and hero cards of the Hobbit Overhill and Underhill Saga expansion box. So we'll see you at the start of Season 3.